Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Ford Group. Let me introduce our member group. There are Elsa Khairul Imama, Ivan Nur Fadila, Ferry Christian Adi, Bilkis Permata Sahara, Anna Fitriani, and Yulia Nurdiana. Uh, we will explain you about motivation. The first is about the traditional approach, the ENTB, or the attitude motivation test battery and motivational quantity. What is motivation? Motivation is usually understood to refer to the desire to imitate L2 learning and the effort employed to sustain it. And in lay term, we all understand it to be a matter of quantity, as in the everyday observation that some learners are highly motivated and others have little or no motivation. Canadian researchers Robert Gardner and Willis Labert in the late 1960s developed what would become the dominant model of L2 learning motivation, which they framed within a wider model of foreign language learning known as the socio-educational model. In the socio-educational model, overall amount of motivation is quantified via three dimensions, each reflected in a separate scale in the EMCB or in the attitude motivation test battery. The first is motivational intensity, which we can explain as how much effort people reportedly expend in learning the language. And the second is about attitudes toward learning, the L2, which we can see as probably how much enjoyment people report feeling when they learn the language. And the third is desire to learn, which can be generally understood as how much personal investment in succeeding in the language people claim for themselves.
Okay, so the next is integrativeness as an antecedent of motivation. But before I start it, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ivan Nurfadila. Okay, next. Integrativeness is the one that has played the most central role in the development of a theory of foreign language motivation. According to Gardner, 2001, integrativeness is an attitude defined as a genuine interest in learning the second language in order to come closer to the other language community. It involves three dimensions. The first, favorable attitudes towards L2 speakers. Second, general interest in foreign languages and low ethnocentrism. And the last, endorsement of reasons for learning the L2 relate to interaction with L2 members, or in Gardner's terms, an integrative orientation. And the next is other antecedents, orientations, and attitudes. Orientation refers to reasons for learning the L2 because they contribute to the setting of goals that will propel and sustain motivation of varying intensities and qualities. Of course, reasons are not antithetical or mutually exclusive, and therefore, a given individual may exhibit several orientations at once. There are five orientations for learning a language that L2 learners most commonly report across contexts. The first, instrumental, when pragmatic and utilitarian reasons are important. Second, for knowledge or enlightened understanding of one's own identity, language, or culture, and to become a more knowledgeable person. Third, to facilitate travel to other countries or parts of a country. Fourth, for fostering general friendship with members of the target language. And the last, for integrative reasons related to identification with the target culture and a genuine desire to become more like members of the L2 group.
Okay, I'm Very Krishnadi and I will explain you about self-determination theory and intrinsic motivation. Okay, let's get to the topic. Self-determination theory suggests that people are motivated to grow and change by innate psychological needs. This theory identifies three key psychological needs that are believed to be innate and universal. The first point is competence. It means that people need to acquire mastery of tasks and learn different skills. And the second is connection or attachment. People need to experience a sense of belonging and attachment to others. And the last is autonomy. It means that people need to feel in control of their own behavior and goals. Okay, and the next section is motivation from a distance. AFL learners' orientations and attitudes. There are two types of orientation according to Gardner in Dornier, namely integrative and instrumental. The integrative orientation refers to the desire to learn and be part of another cultural community. The desire to be like experts in other language communities and have a relationship with that community, while the instrumental orientation emphasizes the goal of gaining social recognition or economic benefits through knowledge of a foreign language, such as succeeding in exams to meet certain requirements, career, travel abroad, and others.
Language learning motivation possible in situation of conflict. Clement and Kruidenius say that the motivation and orientation that underlies learning a second language really depend on who is studying and in what environment he is studying. Particularly relevant when applied to others' contexts, especially for settings where language learning occurs, even though speakers of the target language and the first language are directly in conflict. As a case study Arabic in Israel, it was discovered that children are really motivated to learn Arabic in school. This first-hand study of Arabic was what influenced their motivation and attitudes in a positive way. From this research, it can be concluded that learning a foreign language in a school context increases student motivation toward the culture and language being studied. And the next is dynamic motivation, time, context, and behaviors. The New World perspective are related to an emphasis on the dynamic nature of L2 motivation and were followed by Donnier and Otto, who for the first time argue that L2 motivation was mostly portrayed as static in the extant research, whereas in reality, we all know that motivational changes over time are to be expected. They therefore propose the process model of L2 motivation, which is partly based on Hausen and Pull action control theory and concept of motivation in relation to specific contexts, activities, and situations. L2 motivation, not only as a generalized trait, but also as a state trait or a state of goal-directed predisposition to act in a certain way, that is subject to change over time. Motivation is considered in its micro context with the aid of explanation from group dynamics and situated cognition. Beyond L2 achievement, we need to see what change in behavior's motivation can cause. Laurier and Gizer said motivation is a concept that explains why people behave as they do rather than how successful their behavior will be. Okay, thank you.
My name is Anna Fitriani. I will explain about looking forward, the L2 motivational subsystem. Perhaps the most significant change in how we may understand motivation future years is the L2 motivational subsystem formulated by Dornier. This proposal synthesizes previous models into one macro model of language-specific motivation, but buildings in the general social psychological theory of regulatory focus on the notion that humans make decisions as to how to act motivated by reference to an ideal self. The theory of regularity focus was developed by affect and motivation psychologists from Columbia University. Ettore Higgins posits that humans self-regulate their behavior motivated by the need to balance a promotion focus, in which we are able to anticipate gain or pleasure from an action, and intervention focus, in which we are able to anticipate pain or shame from the same action.
Okay, my name is Yulia Nordiana. Now I would like to explain about Behold the Power of Motivation. The first about the association between motivation and behavioral change as well as second language learning. Success has always been reciprocal, not causal. So we can conclude that from this point that motivation can sometimes act as an instrument that increases one's self-confidence and does something beyond the specific limits. The person may do something extraordinary even if motivated. And then the second point is being motivated nurtures more successful second language learning. But conversely, experiencing second language learning success also boosts motivation to even higher levels. in a reinforcing cycle. And the last motivation is indeed central in explaining second language learning, but it cannot be reduced to a few variables, nor can it be exhausted with just a few questionnaires and group data. Annotated suggestions for further reading. If we want to understand motivation in a research context, we can pay attention to detailed questionnaire instruction and correlation results, as well as the imagination to put theoretical prediction and quantitative results in a contextual perspective. If following the latest second language motivation research, the strategy used is to find the latest problems content from the following key journals, such as language learning journals, modern language systems, and language journal, and then social psychology and learning individual difference in psychology. Well, those are all presentations from our group. Hopefully useful. More or less, we apologize. Thank you.